July 19, 1940. Adolf Hitler stands before the Reichstag in Berlin. Germany controls Europe. France surrendered 4 weeks ago. The British Army barely escaped annihilation at Dunkirk. Belgium, the Netherlands, Denmark, Norway, all under German occupation. Poland erased from the map. Hitler is at the absolute peak of his power, and he offers Britain peace. The terms are explicit. Britain can keep its empire, India, Africa, Australia, all of it. Germany keeps continental Europe. No invasion of Britain, no threat to the Royal Navy. The war ends. Everyone goes home. 3 days later, Winston Churchill rejects the offer. Publicly. Absolutely. Britain will fight on alone if necessary. Most people know Churchill refused to negotiate with Hitler. What they don't know is this wasn't the first time Hitler made the offer, or that he'd try again, or what the world would look like if Britain had said yes. Because accepting peace in 1940 might have made Nazi Germany permanent. The Holocaust would have continued unopposed. No D-Day, no liberation. Fascism dominant from the Atlantic to the Urals. This is why Churchill rejected Hitler's peace offers, and how that decision shaped the next 80 years. If you're interested in the strategic decisions that actually changed history, not just battles, but the calculations behind them, hit subscribe. Hitler's first peace offer came barely a month into the war. September 1st, 1939. Germany invades Poland. Britain and France declare war 2 days later in defense of their Polish ally. But they don't actually fight. No offensive into Germany, no attempt to relieve Poland. They wait. Poland falls in 28 days. The Blitzkrieg is devastatingly effective. Combined armor and air power overwhelms Polish defenses designed to fight the previous war. By October 6th, Poland no longer exists as a state. Germany and the Soviet Union have divided it under the secret protocol of the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. And Hitler makes his first move. October 6th, 1939. Reichstag speech. Hitler proposes peace. The offer is straightforward. Germany keeps Poland, Austria, and Czechoslovakia, territories already conquered. No further demands in Western Europe. A peace conference to settle remaining issues and return to normal relations with Britain and France. His logic: Poland is gone. The war's objective: defending Poland is impossible. British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain rejects the offer within days. So does French Premier Édouard Daladier. Why? First, accepting meant abandoning Poland, the ally they'd pledged to defend. The moral cost was impossible. Second, and more important, Hitler's word meant nothing. 13 months earlier, September 1938, Chamberlain had signed the Munich Agreement. Hitler promised the Sudetenland region of Czechoslovakia was his last territorial demand in Europe. Chamberlain returned to Britain proclaiming, "Peace for our time." 6 months later, March 1939, Hitler violated the agreement. German troops occupied the rest of Czechoslovakia. The state ceased to exist. Hitler's promises were worthless. Winston Churchill, then First Lord of the Admiralty, had warned about this pattern for years. He'd said of dictators, "They ride to and fro upon tigers which they dare not dismount, and the tigers are getting hungry." Britain had already fed the tiger at Munich. They wouldn't do it again. Hitler had tested the waters. The answer was no. 9 months later, the strategic situation transformed completely. May 10th, 1940. Germany invades France, Belgium, and the Netherlands simultaneously. The blitzkrieg that crushed Poland now turns west. In 6 weeks, it's over. The French army collapses. The British Expeditionary Force is trapped at Dunkirk. 338,000 soldiers barely escape across the Channel, abandoning all their equipment on the beaches. But the evacuation itself revealed something Hitler hadn't anticipated. British resolve. When the Royal Navy realized standard warships couldn't reach the shallow beaches, they made an extraordinary call. Over 850 civilian vessels answered: fishing boats, lifeboats, sailing barges, cockleboats. British fishermen and dock workers sailed directly into an active war zone under constant bombardment. These little ships ferried soldiers from the beaches to waiting destroyers offshore, while most troops evacuated. Through the harbour, those small civilian boats made the crucial difference where larger vessels couldn't operate, ordinary citizens becoming war heroes. France signs an armistice June 22nd. By early July, Hitler controls Western Europe. The only major power still fighting is Britain, isolated, alone, with its army barely reconstituted. Hitler doesn't want to invade Britain. Operation Sea Lion, the planned invasion, is fraught with risk. The Royal Navy dominates the Channel. The Luftwaffe hasn't achieved air superiority. Amphibious assault against a defended island is the most difficult military operation possible. July 19, 1940. Another Reichstag speech. Another peace offer. This time, the terms are detailed. Germany keeps Western Europe, France, Belgium, the Netherlands, Poland, Czechoslovakia. Britain keeps its empire intact. No German interference with India, Africa, or the colonies. Prisoners of war returned. The bloodshed stops. Hitler frames it as magnanimous. Germany has won. Britain should accept that and move on. The rejection comes within an hour, but not from Churchill, not even from the British government. A BBC journalist named Sefton Delmer, fluent in German, furious at what he's hearing, goes on air before the War Cabinet has even met to discuss a response. Broadcasting directly to Nazi leadership, he says, "We hurl it right back at you, right in your evil-smelling teeth." The Nazis assume Delmer speaks for the government. He doesn't. He's just angry. But he's right. Churchill's official response follows 3 days later. Not a diplomatic note, just a BBC broadcast dismissing any possibility of negotiation. The British position is absolute. No talks, no compromise, no acceptance of German domination of Europe. Why reject when Britain is alone and losing? Because Churchill rejected peace because he knew Roosevelt was practically begging to help. American industrial support was already flowing. The calculation wasn't hope, it was math. The Destroyers for Bases deal comes 2 months later in September 1940. 50 American destroyers for British base rights. Lend-Lease, proposed in December and passed in March 1941, would provide billions in military aid. Churchill's bet: hold on long enough and America enters. Not by choice necessarily, but by circumstance. But before that happened, Hitler would make one final desperate attempt. May 10th, 1941. A Messerschmitt Bf 110 crosses the Scottish coast and crashes near Glasgow. The pilot parachutes to safety and identifies himself to a farmer. Rudolf Hess, deputy Führer of Nazi Germany, Adolf Hitler's closest confidant after Hermann Göring. He's come to negotiate peace. What made this mission extraordinary was the physics of it. Hess flew a Bf 110D fighter bomber, a combat aircraft, not a diplomatic shuttle. He took off at 5:45 p.m. from Augsburg, Germany, with fuel calculated to reach Scotland with no fuel to return. He was committed to landing on enemy soil. He carried no radio, no way to communicate with ground control, no ability to call for help if British fighters intercepted him. Navigation relied entirely on celestial observation and dead reckoning across the North Sea in darkness. If he miscalculated his position or fuel consumption, he'd ditch in the Channel with no rescue possible. This wasn't diplomatic calculation. It was desperation, a one-way suicide mission disguised as faith in peace. Hitler disavowed him immediately. Hess had gone mad, acting alone. But the evidence suggests complexity. Hess carried a detailed peace proposal. The terms matched previous offers. Germany gets Europe, Britain keeps its empire. But this time, there's an additional element: benevolent neutrality. Hitler wanted Britain to sit back and watch while he destroyed Russia. Because by May 1941, Hitler has already decided to invade the USSR. Operation Barbarossa is scheduled for June 22nd, 6 weeks away. Germany is about to fight a two-front war, exactly the nightmare that destroyed it in World War I. Hess's mission: get Britain out of the war before opening the Eastern Front. Churchill doesn't even consider it. Hess is imprisoned immediately. No negotiation, no discussion, not even a formal response. Why such absolute refusal when the strategic situation had improved for Britain? By May 1941, Lend-Lease has passed. American aid is flowing. Britain's supply situation is stabilizing. More important, intelligence suggests Germany is preparing to invade the Soviet Union. British codebreakers are picking up massive troop movements east. If Germany opens a second front, Britain's strategic position improves dramatically. And reports from occupied Europe are getting worse: mass shootings, concentration camps, systematic persecution. Accepting peace means accepting that horror as permanent. 6 weeks after Hess lands, June 22, 1941, Germany invades the Soviet Union. Hitler is now fighting the two-front war he desperately wanted to avoid, the war that would destroy him. 3 peace offers: October 1939, July 1940, May 1941. 3 absolute rejections. The strategic calculation was straightforward. Hitler's promises meant nothing. Every agreement he'd signed, he'd violated. Munich, violated 6 months later. The non-aggression pact with Poland, invaded 1939. The pact with the Soviet Union, violated June 1941. Hitler viewed agreements as temporary tactical advantages. But there was a deeper strategic layer Churchill understood with perfect clarity. Germany could not win a two-front war. The numbers proved it. In the first year of Operation Barbarossa, German casualties reached 830,000 men. Soviet losses were catastrophic, 2.8 million by year's end, but Stalin had a population of 190 million to draw from. Germany's total population was 90 million. Every German casualty was a permanent loss. Every Soviet casualty could be replaced. By early 1942, Germany had absorbed over 800,000 casualties. Soviet losses were 4 times higher, yet their replacement capacity remained greater. Churchill's gamble wasn't based on hope. It was based on mathematics. Germany was grinding itself into exhaustion. Beyond strategy lay morality. By 1940, Nazi occupation policies were clear. Mass arrests in Poland, executions, forced labor, the beginning of what would become the Holocaust. Accepting peace meant accepting this as permanent. It meant abandoning millions to slavery and death. Churchill's view: some things are worse than losing. Britain would fight on, not because victory was certain, but because surrender was unthinkable. And America was coming. Roosevelt couldn't declare war. Congress wouldn't allow it, but Roosevelt was doing everything possible short of belligerence. September 1940. Destroyers for bases. December 1940. Arsenal of Democracy speech. March 1941. Lend-Lease passes, $50 billion authorized. August 1941. Atlantic Charter. Roosevelt and Churchill declare joint war aims before America is even in the war. Churchill's bet: hold on, and America finds a way in. December 7th, 1941. Pearl Harbor. December 11th, 1941. Hitler declares war on the United States. Churchill's gamble paid off. So, what happens if Britain accepts peace in July 1940? First, Nazi Germany becomes permanent. With Britain out, Germany consolidates Europe. France, Belgium, the Netherlands, Poland, Czechoslovakia, Denmark, Norway, all under German administration indefinitely. By 1940, Nazi occupation policies were already clear. Mass arrests, ghettoization, forced labor camps, systematic persecution. This was just the beginning. In our timeline, what started as persecution in 1940 became industrial genocide by 1942. 6 million Jews murdered. Millions more, Slavs, Roma, disabled people, killed. In a timeline where Britain accepts peace, none of this stops. The persecution continues, escalates, and runs until there are no more victims. The Nazis had already prepared the Sonderfahndungsliste GB, the special search list for Great Britain. 2,820 people marked for immediate arrest. Politicians, novelists like H.G. Wells and Virginia Woolf, the founder of the Boy Scouts. Anyone who might resist. The liquidation of British culture was already planned and printed. Peace was never an option. Second, Germany invades the Soviet Union with vastly superior forces. In our timeline, Germany had to defend against British bombing and hold forces in the West. Without Britain in the war, hundreds of thousands of additional troops, thousands of aircraft, entire panzer divisions, all freed for the assault on the USSR. The Red Army lost 2.8 million men in 1941 alone. Yet it survived, partly because of massive American aid. Without Britain fighting, does Roosevelt convince an isolationist Congress to send billions to Stalin alone? Even if some aid flows, it's drastically reduced. The Arctic convoys through Britain, carrying critical winter equipment, close completely. Here's what that meant. 15 million pairs of boots sent to the USSR, American trucks, and American food. Without those supplies keeping the Red Army mobile, Moscow might fall in 1941 or 42. Third, American entry into Europe becomes uncertain. Pearl Harbor still happens. Hitler might still declare war on America. But without Britain, America has no European ally. No bases for bombing campaigns. No staging ground for invasion. D-Day without Britain? Impossible. No bases in England, no intelligence cooperation, no combined command. America might fight Germany, but winning alone is a fundamentally different war. Fourth, the atomic balance shifts. Germany's nuclear program failed in our timeline. Wrong reactor design, miscalculated critical mass, resources diverted to survival. In a timeline where Germany controls Europe unopposed, those constraints lift. More time, more resources, stable research conditions. Does Germany succeed? Not certain. The brain drain already happened. Heisenberg's miscalculations might persist. Hitler's dismissal of Jewish physics might continue. But when America tests its first bomb in 1945, does Nazi Germany already have one? The possibility exists. The risks escalate. The cost in our timeline, 60 million dead, possibly 85 million total. 6 years of total war, entire cities destroyed. But the alternative was a world where fascism dominated Europe indefinitely. The Holocaust continued unopposed, and nuclear weapons might have belonged to Nazi Germany. This is what Churchill's refusal to negotiate prevented. 3 peace offers. 3 refusals. Churchill rejected them because Hitler's word was worthless, because moral principles mattered, because America would enter, because Germany fighting on multiple fronts meant inevitable exhaustion. And he was right. D-Day vindicated that decision. The largest seaborne invasion in history, 160,000 troops crossed the Channel, with 875,000 landed by month's end. The Germans, already bled by years fighting the Soviet Union, had no capacity to stop them. Because Churchill refused peace, Germany faced defeat on all sides. Churchill's refusal wasn't stubbornness, it was a calculated bet that fighting was better than surrender. That moral principles matter, that victory was possible if Britain held on. He was vindicated. America entered, the Soviets held, D-Day succeeded. Berlin fell. Nazi Germany was destroyed rather than accommodated. The post-war world was built on defeating fascism, not accepting it. That outcome required someone willing to reject peace when peace meant surrender. Churchill made that choice, and it changed everything. What do you think? Was Churchill right to refuse peace when Britain stood alone? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If you found this valuable, hit subscribe. I break down the strategic decisions and economic systems that shaped our world. Thanks for watching.